In this episode of Getting to There, I had the pleasure to sit down with a man that's risen from nothing to become one of the largest franchise owners in the real estate world. David Osborn has the persistence and conviction that sets him apart, creating a foundation for individuals that wanted to grab life big on a napkin. Being a world traveler with a vein for adventure, David discusses the importance of family and balance. So please sit back and enjoy this episode of Getting to There. Thanks for joining us. Wanted to ask you about your decision to travel when you were 26, travel the world.
Yeah, so that's an interesting story. My best friend from college was 1 year behind me, and his family had a tradition of traveling around the world. And he'd asked me to go with him, and I said, nope, I'm going to work and I'm going to make some money, and it's not my family tradition, it's yours. I love traveling already because of the military background of moving with my dad all the time, but I wasn't willing to take off a year. My first job out of college was selling computer systems door to door. So I'd walk into a skyscraper and I would just walk down the skyscraper, knocking on doors, trying to sell computer systems. And it was a good job and I enjoyed it. It was very challenging. And I was one of the top salespeople. But my boss wanted a little bit more from me than just work. It's kind of like a Me Too moment, I guess they'd call it, or Him Too or whatever. Back then, I guess we just called it life. But it was an uncomfortable situation. She was married. She was probably 10 years older than me, and after putting up with it for a year, I just decided it was a bust. I was out. So I turned to my buddy, actually a few months before I quit, and said, look, man, I'm in. I'm going to sell everything. I moved home, tried to save as many paychecks as I could, was able to save $10,000, and went hitchhiking around the world with my best bud. And the ticket cost $3,000. So I basically had $20 a day for 1 year of travel, is what it was supposed to be, but it ended up stretching out to 2 years and 3 months.
So with all these things going on, how do you recharge? I think as people get more successful, they have more pulls at their life, both personal and professional. How do you recharge so that you're the best you can be for your family and for the people that are counting on you?
That's a great question, and I've hacked this over a lifetime of getting overly stressed and feeling like, and literally having a nervous breakdown when I was 31 or something similar to that, where I was just so broken inside while still trying to outwardly look like I was functioning, and mainly because I wasn't recuperating. I was just driving all the time. I reached the limits of my physical capacity. So what I do now, and I picked up all of my wisdom comes from other people that I just implement. Execution is way more important than ideas. And I put 4 vacations in my calendar every year. Right now, my wife and I are already talking about what we want to do in 2019. One of those vacations is going to be epic. I just came back from seeing the Northern Lights, Iceland and Paris, and it was amazing. And I went with a big group of families for the first part of the trip, and then just my family for the second part of the trip. Was super refreshed. Couldn't work. I mean, I was moving fast. That were time difference. I probably worked at maybe an hour every other day or something. And it forces me to completely check out, completely be as present as I can to my family. So I do one of those a quarter, not necessarily that big, but one a quarter where there's a good vacation. And then I do a little sub vacation, similar thing, like little getaways, Cabo to go golfing, or, maybe I'm not a big Vegas fan, but as an example, maybe a couple couples to Vegas. And I also make sure I have family trips, and I make sure I have couples trips. I make sure I have date nights with my wife. It all goes back to my flight path and my goals. And really just holding myself accountable to what I create right about now, actually, which is the flight plan for my life.
That's awesome. So you've been broke and you've had $100 million. Where on that spectrum was money taken care of? Like, is it the $15 million level that you're like, all right, I got that, now I'm gonna do the other stuff? I mean, you kept going, but at some point the money wasn't the driver because you were comfortable. On that spectrum from, bankrupt to 100 million, where was that for you?
Well, it was great having $20 a day, honestly. I lived on $7,000 in over a year. I met a rich girl out there and lived with her for a while, so that extended the trip about 9 months. And I was working, but she didn't really have money. She had property, so we converted it into rentals, and we were just doing what I'd always done, rental income and stuff like that. So that was nice. But it was great to live on $20 a day, hitchhiking around the world and staying on people's couches and leaning into people's hospitality. And the reason I'm so generous with my house now, and my wife calls it like a train station because people come and go so much, is I had so much kindness given to me when I was hitchhiking around the world that I try to pay that forward.
a luxury once experienced becomes a necessity. So as you know, as you go to the Marriott and you want to go to the other place, you never go back to the Marriott, you know.
There's a lot of truth in that, Fred, and I'm a little disappointed in myself because I used to live in tents and youth hostels just fine, and I've definitely become a snob. I've been spoiled. I'm aware of it, which I guess is better than being unaware of it, but for sure, you know, we stayed in a beautiful hotel in Paris, and it was probably built 400 years ago, and it was expensive, but you could hear everybody upstairs, every door that closed, and I'm like, wow, I think I'd rather be in an American new Four Seasons or something, you know, just because I want that quiet time. And if the air conditioner blows on me in a hotel, I get fussy. Yeah, I've gotten spoiled, no question.
One of my favorite questions to ask people is what was the first thing you treated yourself to once you made it, or once you had a big case? You know, for me it was the Rolex that still doesn't keep good time, but I got it and I checked it off. You know, what was your first big?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, there's two things that come to mind. Number one was I finally bought a barely new car. I didn't buy a new car until I bought one for my wife. I just couldn't get my mind across the value proposition of buying a 1 or 2 year old car. But I finally bought a $40,000 Lexus when I was, I don't know, I was probably 30 something and 32, 33, and I was having a good year. And I was tired of the agents that worked in my office that I knew made less than me driving nicer cars than me, and I was tired of being embarrassed about walking to my car because I had a very old car that I'd kind of beat up. And so that was probably the first thing. And the second thing I noticed is a smaller thing, but I get a lot of massages. I try to get one a week, and that was a reward I gave myself as I made more money, because before obviously it seemed like a lot of money, $100 a pop or 80 or whatever it was back then. But now I try to get a massage in my house. My wife and I probably once every other week. I want to keep my body working, and I'm bad at stretching, and so the massage kind of makes up for some of that.
So I just assumed, maybe you're sandbagging me, I just assumed it was going to be the jet. Didn't you treat yourself? So how do you forget about that? See, that's how I know.
That you said the first thing. You said the first thing.
So that
the jet was that was a way later evolution, and that was 2013. I had a buddy that had a private plane, and I'd been using it on and off for a few years, and I struggled really hard with that one, man. I just didn't think it was a wise decision, and it's not. One thing that got me across the finish line is a friend of mine said to me one time, do you think you'll make more money with the plane? And the first one was a turboprop. Will you make more money with a plane or less money? And I'm like, well, probably more money, I would think, because I'd be more happy and I'd get more done, and I could go get more stuff done in a shorter period of time. And so I bought the plane, and my income went up every year for the next 4 years, and really doubled in 4 years. Now that could be true, but unrelated. In other words, it could be uncausally related because the economy was also recovering, but it's certainly a good justification for staying in the private transportation. And what I said earlier, there's only one thing that you can't have at $200,000 to $300,000 a year that you can at a higher number. It's the private transportation. That makes a big difference, and it's really great to be able to have an appointment and not have to end it because of a flight, and to be able to get home to my kids, kiss them before they go to sleep instead of coming home on whatever the airlines have for me, and coming direct instead of having to hop. The actual moment on the plane isn't that different. In fact, it's almost more comfortable in a commercial aircraft, especially in first class. But the convenience, the timing, the fact that it waits for you instead of you having to meet it, all of that is a game changer, and I love it, and I hope I don't have to ever sacrifice it, but I could live without it if I had to.
So a plane and boat are in the same category for me. It's nice to have a friend that has them, but I don't necessarily have to have them, you know.
It's better that way. Yeah. You're way smarter.
David Osborn, I want to thank you so much for spending time with us. Looking forward to seeing you in Colorado, and thank you very much, brother. Take care.
Great to be with you, Brad. Thanks, my pleasure, man.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Getting to There. Join us next time as we interview more people to find out how they got to there.